Hello everyone. I'm back again. Hopefully I can continue and tell you some more before my passenger comes back. By the way, I am on a job at the moment where this lady has me driving her till 3 o'clock. And that's what's happening in the London cab trade at the moment. Right. But I believe I need to tell a story here, because what is happening in this trade and what we're going through right now, I believe could have been avoidable years ago, and we wouldn't have been in this position. And I'm going to start really, I know I've did a video a minute ago, but I'm going to start really with some background information here so people can understand. Now, when Ken Livingstone became mayor, his first thing to do was to attack the London cab trade, which he called it a white male-dominated club. He also called it a white mafia. Okay? At the time, I had had my badge a few years. I'd been driving since 1994. Alright. I thought his comments really, well, I would start thinking to myself, well, hang on, no one is being stopped from doing the knowledge, especially black people. Because I'll use my friends as an example who I grew up with. When I started the knowledge, many of them, I would say to them, look, come, oh boy, I can't be bothered with all that long thing. So, that was their problem. That was not a race problem. But the mayor, and at the time, he was part of the Labour Party, they made it a race problem. Okay? Right. Now, when this first started happening with these comments from the mayor, I had wrote an article in a London taxi paper at the time called the Taxi Times, which I literally spoke against what the mayor had said. Okay, because I thought he was really overstepping the mark by what he had said. Because the knowledge was there for everybody, whether you're black, white, pink or blue with polka dot spots. It didn't matter. All you had to do was pluck the courage up and go and do it. Yes, a lot of black people at the time chose not to do it. That was their choice. All right. Now, around late 1999 to 2000, or 2000 I think it was, I'm trying to remember the year exactly, Bob Oddy, who was the head of the LTDA at the time, contacted me at the South London Green Badge School in Clapham, where he asked me if I would, he said to me, his first words was, did you hear what the mayor said about the cab trade? I said, yes. He asked me if I would come and go to a meeting with him at Windsor House. And I said, yes, anything to stop the mayor from saying what he is saying. I went to this meeting. Okay? When the meeting finished, Bob Oddy introduced me to a lady called Joyce Mahmood, who at the time, when he explained to her who I was, and he explained to her that I drive a London black cab, her comments was, oh. I actually said to her at the time, with your comment, you didn't realize there were black people like me driving a cab, did you? She said, no. I says, that's why the mayor needs to get his facts right before he speaks. She asks, what do we do at the school? I said to her, why don't you come and see for yourself? And then her words was, she will come. When she came, her exact words were, she has come to see what is going on before Lee Jasper goes off half-cocked. Those were her exact words at the time, and I will never forget this until the day I die. Okay? What shocked her was that the school was owned by a black man. And this black man by the name of Mr. Alex Eldon, who was in the Royal Air Force and part of the West Indian ex-servicemen. They were the ones that started this school, not the mayor. This school was going before there was a mayor in London. Right. She was shocked that this school was owned by a black man, but most of the students were white. Which I said to her, well, why is that a problem? They're here because they want to do the knowledge. And if black people don't want to do the knowledge, then the mayor should not be making an issue of it like if he's trying to solve a problem for us. All they're doing is making life harder for us. Anyway, this went on. A meeting was set up at Windsor House where I went to that meeting. And in that room was Lee Jasper and this Joyce Mahmood. And they started to speak about getting funding for the school. I asked the question at the time, what about the other knowledge schools, which included Knowledge Point School, and a couple others that were there. Okay? His words were, he's not interested in them. And I actually said to him, well, what about the equal opportunities? Surely it's there for everyone. His words was, they've had it good for too long. All right. I became uninterested in this meeting. At the end, he said to the lady, Joyce Mahmood, when we're finished, Ken can come and cut the red ribbon. And that's when I thought, I can see what you all are up to. I went back to Mr. Eldon and I told him not to have anything to do with these people because they're trying to hijack the school. Because anyhow they had done it, you would have seen on the television, Mayor opens up Knowledge School in South London for the ethnic minority, when that school has been there long before there was a mayor. So what right have they got to come and jump on our bandwagon? All right, by that time, eventually I had applied for the job at the Carriage office. I wasn't given an interview. I called to inquire why. I was told at the time when I inquired, and I will not mention the man's name now, but I was told by the gentleman, oh, you've been very popular in the taxi papers lately, haven't you? I says, well, what do you mean? He's talking about the article I wrote against Ken Livingstone. This is 2001, guys, okay? We're talking 16 years ago. All right. Then he said to me, and of course you've got this complaint against your name. I says, well, what about my side? He said, well, we can't go into it. You know, in the end, I had to go to a lawyer. That's how I got the job at the Carriage office, because they didn't want to give me the job. And that's how I got the job and became the first black person in 300 years to do that job at the Carriage office, because they thought, no, what I said in that paper, they don't want him. But I got the job anyway. Within a week of me having that job, a call came from somewhere in the mayor's office. They wanted to know how I was settling in. I said I was doing fine. Then that person asked me if I would come and take some pictures with the mayor. I said, what for? That person then said to me, what do you mean, what for? You got to remember how you got the job. I thought, well, I got the job on my merit. And I had to go to a lawyer. I didn't know they had anything to do with it. Anyway, he said to me, oh, you can't tell me that they treat you with any respect in there. I says, what do you mean? Then he says, you can't tell me that everything is hunky-dory in there with them. I says, what? Are you telling me they're racist? Is that what you're saying? Now, he didn't answer. And bearing in mind, I did not know who I was speaking to at the time, but I knew it came from out of one of TFL's management offices. But I don't know who the person was. Right. Then he said to me, well, what about these pictures? So I asked the question, well, if I come and take these pictures, are my white colleagues going to be in these pictures? I was promptly told, no, we don't want them. We just want you. I said, well, you know what? If you don't want them, you don't want me. That was when I was told I've started thinking too white. Okay? I broke down in tears at the time when this was told to me. It was Peter Hendy who ended up becoming Sir Peter Hendy, who was the one that got them to leave me alone when I got that job. And from that day to this day, everything TFL came up with, I have had something to say against it. All right? While working in that place, I used to see things which I think, well, no, this should not be happening. One of them I have touched on with the private hire. I used to stand there and I would watch, and I would watch people come into that place. Okay? And they would be, you know, they would bring a family member or some friend with them. And why I say that is, as I'm talking to you, I'm going to read you all something with a letter in 2010 I sent to John Mason, who was the head of the Carriage office at the time. And sorry, guys, I have to put my second eyes on here to read it, so bear with me. And this is just part of this letter I sent. And it says, but the same cannot be said for the private hire. If there ever was a way of making loads of money easily, this was it. I would stand and watch in disgust as the PCO was slowly turned into a cattle market. I would see people coming in droves to register for the private hire, and to have to stand there and watch some of these people come with a family member or friend to fill out an application form for them. And why was this? because they could not speak English. Yet some of these people would blatantly do this in front of the private hire staff, and the staff would still serve them. I saw this as a breakdown of the standards. This should never have been allowed. Now look what you have inherited, Mr. Mason. I blame a lot of the staff for the predicament the trade as a whole now finds itself in. The attitude that some of the staff portrays is not an attitude that should be condoned in the PCO. In other words, the PCO is no place for casual workers. I wrote this in 2010 to the head of the Carriage office at the time, who turned around and wrote in a taxi newspaper that I, Courtney Connell, could never run the knowledge in accordance with the law. We are now in 2017. Do we see the problem on the streets of London now, people? Okay? And I will carry on. When I became an examiner, I took an oath to myself that I would do the utmost to maintain the standards and the integrity of the knowledge, the PCO and the cab trade as a whole. And I know that I could say the same for all the other examiners, because we all recognize that to give an individual a license, then unleash them to the public, is a great responsibility. And when you have staff who do not question or use their discretion, then we will end up with a system that is open to abuse. When I raised these concerns about this in staff briefings, I was told by, and I will not mention his name, and his exact words were, "You wear two hats," implying that because I had a green badge, I had something against the private hire drivers. This was not the case at all. What I raised concerns about was the way in which the licensing of the private hire drivers was implemented. This was in 2010. I wrote this to them. Okay? Right, but they call it a rant. All right. Then I go on and I say here, at the time, I truly believe that if I could see the problems and the flaws within which the way these licenses were issued, then surely the management can see the same problems. But this was not the case at all. All they were interested in was implementing the mayor's policy of diversity at any cost, or as the mayor would put it, redressing the balance. I am not saying that diversity is a bad thing, not at all, but the standards, disciplines should not be torn down in order to see that diversity. This doesn't help anyone. It only hinders them. No private hire driver should ever have been licensed as an individual. The mere fact that all the proprietors were licensed first, then all drivers should have been linked to an office that is registered on the PCO database and signage placed on their cars to show their respective offices. This would go in some way to dealing with the touting issue. I wrote this to them some time ago. That was part of it. Yes? But they had no interest in what I was saying, because as a black person, I should have been bawling for discrimination and being hard done by. You know? This is the way the PC brigade work. Or as I call them, the white do-gooders. Because that's what they are. Yeah? And all they're doing is making our lives hell out here. Now, we go on a bit with the Carriage office again. You know, I can remember sitting in meetings and they would show charts to show how many white drivers, how many black drivers, how many Asians. Yeah? How many Asians. Okay? And I would ask the question, are they now going to press gang black people to drive cabs? And they would always answer me as, "Oh, what's it now, Mr. Connell?" They did not like me asking questions. Right. And I would say to them, are you going to press gang? Are you going to force black people to drive cabs? Because if they don't want to do the knowledge, it's nobody's fault but their own. And you should not be here making this look like there's something stopping black people from doing the knowledge. This is wrong. They hated me with these questions. And this carried on. I can remember when they did road shows to go to the mosque to recruit more Muslim drivers. And before anybody says anything, I am not having a go at Muslims here, because it is not their fault. Okay? And I asked the question again at the time, when are you going to go to a synagogue? When are you going to go to a church? Where does it end? If people want to do the knowledge, it doesn't matter where they're from. Okay? But you must know something about London. You must be part of London. You must be able to converse in the English language. It's a simple process. Right. If a London cab driver speaks another language, then that's a brilliant London cab driver. Like what we have now. We have Moroccans, we have Somalians, we have all types right now. Who speaks other languages? There's no other country that has a cab service like this. Okay, and we should be embracing this. But TFL, okay, because of their PC attitude, has allowed things to lapse. Yeah? So now we have a serious problem on the streets. Even down to come in with the black cabs if you want then. Yes? TFL, they want to tell us what kind of signs should be on the cab. But yet, you don't think it's appropriate to tell the cab driver how they should dress in a cab. Or how their cab should look. Because if we're meant to be ambassadors of this city, then we should look the part, play the part, and be the part. Irrespective of what color or religion you are, or race, or sex in the cab trade. But TFL is not interested in none of this. Okay? So we go back, as I said, to working at the Carriage office. Yeah? I have seen these things. Yes? And I'll come to the biggest one. The guy who killed his wife. And he ended up on the knowledge. Why? Because the staff, most probably they were temps at the time, who were only following the guidelines. Because this man never went to prison, he went to a secure institution, you allowed him on the knowledge. But there's a saying, discretion is the better part of valor. And that person who allowed him to be on the knowledge should have used their discretion at the time. And not allow this man to start the knowledge. Then when the examiners refused to test him, they were told, and guys, you will have to excuse me. I will come back to this. My passenger has returned.